This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on India as investment destination. The participants are V. Raghuraman, former Secretary General SOCHAM, and Sanjay Jha, India Bureau Chief, ITN News, London.
There has been a talk about has India lost its story. We were one of the most favorite nations for investment from all over the world. We used to get foreign investment direct through the FDI or FII routes. Now the Finance Minister has said that India will again see a long spell of high and sustained growth. And the focus of the Indian economy has been on infrastructure investment, which has grown massively, supported by increased private sector participation. How do you see India as a destination now?
See, what you say is right, because all over the world, till 3 years back, India was a real buzzword all around as the place where, it's going to overtake China, and a lot of hype was developing. But suddenly we have lost the script, as you rightly said, and we found that we have been actually digging ourselves into a hole with one problem or the other, one scandal or the other, one scam or the other. I think what Finance Minister has been able to reassure right now to the investors, because we have been assuring that every year. Every year we have been having such investment discussions. But what he has said is that probably that yes, government means business, and we have overcome all the problems. It's possible for us to really take your concerns as well as that of the private sector. So it means that there is a way where he's trying to put a lot of confidence among the investors. But whether this is going to translate into the kind of real results as he is hoping, especially since people are now waiting with bated breath the forthcoming elections. So it's a thing for us to sit and watch whether there has been a bottoming out of the economy and that the industry is picking up, because yesterday you found that the industrial IIP figures have come out for the key sectors, and you find the two sectors, especially electricity and one other sector, it has been doing well, which shows that yes, and also we are in the positive territory in the month of September. But whether it's a blip or it's just a thing that it's going to continue, and probably what Finance Minister says is that yes, it is possible for us to see some reversal and investors may actually get back. One of the indicators of this is the stock market. Today it is actually at its peak, and also exports are showing good sign of growth. And we have had a very good monsoon. So in spite of the delayed monsoon and the floods, we hope that the agriculture will actually spur up the rural economy, and that's going to actually speed up demand.
You interestingly mentioned about the stock market being at the peak, but we don't see a lot of foreign inflow despite the Sensex being at its peak in last years. What reason would you attribute?
The reason is it's once bitten, twice shy. And we found that the Fed, especially the US Fed, and its quantitative easing, now it looks as if it's going to be extended. So the panic which was there in May has now actually got subdued, and we find that next time also when it is going to be there, probably we won't have the same type of effect, because the type of measures RBI has taken, stabilizing the rupee, and also the manner in which the Reserve Bank Governor has stated that the stranded investments in infrastructure will get released, and that banks will start lending them after restructuring the loans, and that the bottlenecks in this will get resolved by the Finance Minister, as well as the type of urgency which is there with respect to the money which is already invested to give productive gains. I think this will give us good amount of hope for fresh investments to sink in.
One interesting aspect of the present government was a trust on the infrastructure growth. There was a complete trust and investment was required for power, road, port, civil aviation, etc. And it was also talked about in the 12th plan period, and that was projected around $1 trillion. But we don't see a momentum, we don't see a participation from the private sector which the government has hoped for. So when we say that the Indian economy is doing well, so why don't we see participation of our own domestic investors as well as foreign investors into these sectors? What are the challenges?
See, the main point is the private sector has already invested. In fact, right in the power sector, more than 200,000 crores are just logged in. And we find no movements because no coal is coming out. The projects are stranded because of environmental and forest reasons. There are local pressures with respect to land clearance. I think if you look at all this, the stranding is not due to private sector's inability or its lack of appetite. It is a case where they are not able to proceed further because they are not going to get any more bank finance because banks have burned their fingers, and we find that how the stranded projects should get on ground. Second, government talks about PPP, that's public-private partnership. Unfortunately, we are not able to actually understand exactly how it will work. It is a learning period, and we feel that there is going to be a better understanding as to how such partnerships will work, because government projects will have to actually comply with regulations. Performance will depend on the flexibility and the manner in which we are able to do the work. It's difficult for us to achieve these things within these kinds of procedural and other kinds of environment in which we are. That's why it is taking time for us to understand how PPPs will work. And also in different sectors there are different challenges. The third is, in India it's not as if it's a foreign investment which is flow. It is a domestic investment. It is a domestic public sector investment followed by domestic private sector and then foreign investors. But even public sector investments are not forthcoming. If you look at like NTPC and such kind of premier organizations, many of the projects are stranded. They are not because of just finance, but it is because of the mismatch in the availability of resources for faring, and also we find that there are tariff issues. Today you have got capacities which are not being utilized because states go for load shedding rather than buying costlier power. So there are issues. If we have to know exactly how are we going to go through these issues, because if you look at power sector, it's because of tariffs. In the case of roads, it's tolls. And all these things have created some sort of furor in the minds of the general public that the private sector is there to loot. Unless that type of mistrust is actually done away with, it's going to be some time for us to understand how these kinds of partnerships will work. And investments which are already made give you the right kind of returns so that people start believing in it. And then they definitely know that there's going to be rescinding of the policies as it has happened. You cannot renege and go back and have retrospective legislation. If these kinds of what we call as these uncertainties are removed, surely that's an investment climate. But today we have a problem. There is a problem of coordination between various ministries, coordination between center and state, and I do not know to what extent many of these measures which government has taken will ever fructify or on the ground to see the results. In fact, last year, Prime Minister made the statement that animal spirits of Indian industry entrepreneurship should come out. And we were hoping that there will be right kind of action which will actually spur that. It's not spurred it, but at least it has stirred in the sense that some of these issues have been looked at. But I do not think that we have the machinery where we can speed up these kinds of impediments which are already there in the investment issue. And if you look at from the global indexing, we find that we are so low on the investment as an investment destination and the comfort levels of investors.
You mentioned very interesting points about and questions about the delivery of quality public services by the private operators, and probably to some extent you're hinting at because of the absence of a regulatory framework, clear-cut regulatory framework in each of these sectors, whether it's a road or the power,
telecom.
It's sending out a wrong message in the public's mind. But in India, recent year has emerged as one of the leading public-private partnership markets in the world, and that's where a lot of the foreign investors are really looking to come into it. And it has over 1,000 PPP projects in the infrastructure alone, with a total project cost of around $97 billion. So you think if these anomalies are removed, if these problems in the minds of the investors are taken care, you think this can even be a much more flow?
This is the major thing, as we said already, that stranded investments which are already done, if they give the right kind of results, why would any investor go anywhere else? He will come here because you give him a hassle-free atmosphere to do business. And that's what is lacking today. How do you expect the foreign investor to come in? You look at many of these like ArcelorMittal, look at the case of many other investors who actually had wanted to come in and they are not able to do so. And we actually had the thing on retail, especially opening up retail for FDI. And what has happened? We are finding this onion crisis. We do not have right ways of cold storage and cold chain, and we find that we are not able to get the right kind of expertise to do so. So we are having problems with respect to our own ideologies, our thinking. So it's difficult for us to see the foreign investor is going to come. It's going to be the Indian private sector along with the Indian public sector. Then only other sectors really start kicking in. It has happened in telecom. You look at anywhere, the telecom MNC came up later, much later than when the Indian private sector had entered and established successful business. Similar is the case in power, or you look at any of that. So all this joint venture, public-private partnership with the foreign investor is going to happen and will happen only when the Indian investors pick up, especially the Indian public sector first. In fact, there are a lot of public sector undertakings with flushing with money, and they are not investing.
But government is taking actions. If you see, the government has recent times changed the FDI rule, and also the limits have been increased in several sectors, including retail, as you were just talking, civil aviation, telecom, and to some extent in banking sector, some restrictions have been eased. In fact, up to 100% FDI is allowed under the automatic route in most of the sectors in activities. Despite all this liberalization, why do you think investors are signing up?
See, the biggest challenges in India, as soon as a contract is signed, all the problems begin. In India, if policy is there, there's no problem of talking about projects. Our problem is when you find that there is a case and you find that even public sector investments get stranded. That is the real issue. First is we are not talking about any limits being raised and all that. Okay, these are all necessary interest rates. There are many of the things. But the hassles which are there today, which actually act as a bottlenecks, which are not financially related, or with respect to the case of, let's take the ability of organizations to actually get them on the ground, but the real bottleneck is whether people are being allowed and will be allowed to function in a manner that they can go ahead with a planned action as proposed.
Some analysts have also said that a weak rupee would boost acquisitions in India by the foreign companies. They are in search of cheaper alternative to China. How do you see?
Surely, see, when you have the right atmosphere, as you said, you actually de-bottleneck and get the hassles out. Where will they get such kind of opportunity and markets? But we have to facilitate, isn't it? And give them a thing that, yes, we are not going to have renege, no retrospective policy. And when I walk in with investment, that I know that there is not going to be any what you call change retrospectively, because I come on the basis of certain value and also the manner in which I assess on the ground. And when you find that suddenly something happened 5 years back, 6 years back, and I am just put on that, people are not going to be happy on that. Second question, also we have got the entire case where because of the vigilance and other kinds of rules, today our bureaucracy is not taking the right decisions. Whether the bureaucracy is going to be tuned along with the what you call the policy statements of the finance minister to really accelerate the process, and the coordination mechanism which they have talked about on infrastructure, whether they really are going to work.
I think you do admit that India has a huge opportunity, and it could be witnessing a huge inflow of foreign investment, but it has to ease rules and reduce bureaucratic delays in order to benefit from the currency's weakness and the prevailing economic atmosphere all over the world. It can attract a lot of investment, but it needs to put its the basic thing in order. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You are listening to a discussion on India as investment destination. The participants were V. Raghuraman, former Secretary General, SOCHAM, and Sanjay Jha, India Bureau Chief, ITN News, London. It came to you in the program News Analysis, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.